On today's episode, what to watch versus the Minnesota Wild and Alex Vlasic season preview.
You're Locked On Blackhawks, your daily podcast on the Chicago Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Jack Bushman. You can go and find me on X at Jack Bushman2. Be sure, though, to go and follow my Strictly Blackhawks account at Talkin' Hockey. That way, you can get all of the latest Blackhawks news and updates. And got to let you all know as well that today's episode is sponsored by FanDuel. If you're not already a member, go and visit FanDuel.com right now, and when you put $5 down, you'll get $200 worth of bonus bets guaranteed with America's #1 sportsbook. All right, good morning, everyone. Again, thank you all for joining me on another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, your one-stop shop for all things Chicago Blackhawks. Happy Friday. I hope everyone's morning is off to a wonderful start. Final couple games of the preseason for the Chicago Blackhawks here over the weekend, as we're now down to just 4 days before the season opener in October. And as one final reminder, I do still have a couple of more Chicago Blackhawks season preview segments to go over, as well as a bold predictions episode. Make sure to go and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any of the great Blackhawks related content I'm posting. Really trying to close in on 2,000 subscribers before that season opener. I do think I'm going to come up short, unfortunately, but who knows? With your help, maybe I still can reach 2,000 subscribers. Please go and hit that button, hit the like, and comment down below as well. But for the Blackhawks, second to last preseason game here this evening, the second matchup against the Minnesota Wild, as they'll go for a little bit of revenge following that painful 7-2 defeat to Minnesota earlier on in the week. The Blackhawks will turn back around and then wrap things up in the preseason on Saturday with their second matchup against the St. Louis Blues. Not at the United Center, though. As a reminder, this game will be played up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin at the Fiserv Forum, something that the Blackhawks installed last year, running it back again here this preseason. So tonight against Minnesota, final opportunity for the Blackhawks at the United Center. Two final opportunities to really turn the tides and turn the momentum of this preseason, because things have not gone in the Blackhawks' direction. And even though it is the preseason, it's still disappointing, because ever since training camp opened up a couple of weeks ago, I've mentioned how this is such a crucial training camp and preseason for the Blackhawks. It's a really crucial and meaningful time for them to get off on the right foot and to really allow that, momentum to just carry them into the start of the regular season, where the beginning of the year just hasn't been friendly to the Blackhawks for quite a couple of years now. And once you get behind the eight ball, especially with an underwhelming roster, it's hard to play catch up in those situations. So I was really looking for the Blackhawks to have a better preseason than they've had thus far. However, they still have an opportunity to get things right here this weekend, starting here tonight with the Minnesota Wild. And because they are 0-3-1 through their opening 4 games, I think it's really important that they get at least one victory in these final 2 here over the weekend. And even more important than that, just start playing some better hockey to give this team some mojo before they make that trip to Utah for the Utah Hockey Club's first game in their franchise history. But getting to the game tonight against Minnesota, what we can expect to see out of the Blackhawks lineup. I am recording this before the morning skate as I look at my clock. It's 8:18 a.m. here in the Chicagoland area, so these aren't 100% what the Blackhawks forward lines and deep pairings are going to look like tonight. However, this is what we saw in practice yesterday, and I think it does make sense given who is healthy at this point in time and kind of the performances that we saw in that last preseason game against Minnesota. As far as the Blackhawks top line, a trio that we've seen for the most part throughout preseason in training camp, Tyler Bertuzzi, Connor Bedard. I thought it was always very likely that was going to be a good spot for Bertuzzi for many different reasons. He's stuck with Bedard here throughout preseason thus far. Teuvo Teravainen getting an opportunity on the right wing to potentially punch his ticket on the top line in Utah. And then for the Blackhawks second line, Taylor Hall, Philip Kurashev and Ilya Mikheyev getting an opportunity inside the top six, I believe, for the first time here in the preseason. He might have played actually in the top six in that game against Detroit last weekend. However, certainly a different type of look in the second line than Luke Richardson's gone with for most of training camp thus far. On the Blackhawks, third line looks like it's going to be Nick Foligno and Jason Dickinson sticking together. Ilya Mikheyev, we know, is not going to be with that trio like we saw against Minnesota last time. It's going to be Joey Anderson jumping into the lineup and hoping to put together a solid showing here for the Blackhawks coaching staff. Someone who feels like he could potentially be on the outside looking in if the season opener were to start here tonight. And then the fourth line for the Blackhawks, what we think it's going to be is Pat Maroon, who scored a power play goal, of course, against the St. Louis Blues last weekend. Ryan Donato centering the Blackhawks fourth line, so it seems. And then Craig Smith, who I have thought has been one of the more notable bottom six pieces for the Blackhawks throughout preseason as well. Good to see him getting another opportunity there. And then as far as the extras in the Blackhawks forward group, not what you want to see. It's Lucas Reichel, Andreas Athanasiou, and Brandon Baddock. And as I talked about yesterday when kind of piecing together what we can expect the Blackhawks final roster to look like now that Frank Nazar and Kevin Korchinski have both been reassigned to the Rockford Ice Hogs. Make sure to go and check out the episode from yesterday if you haven't already, because there were lots of great Blackhawks tidbits on what I expect the final roster to look like in the final few jobs that are being competed for. But as I alluded to in that episode yesterday, Lucas Reichel and Andreas Athanasiou on the outside looking in, probably a result of both of them having a pretty shoddy performance in that game against Minnesota. I mean, the analytics for that Blackhawks second line was absolutely dreadful. So I would guess those guys are probably not going to be playing here this evening, given their performance and their lack of success against the Wild on Tuesday. And also, based on what we saw in those line rushes, Andreas Athanasiou really hasn't been any better. So those two guys, I figure, aren't going to go tonight. That would likely put them in the lineup for the preseason finale against the St. Louis Blues. And if that is the case, if Reichel and Athanasiou don't find themselves in the lineup here tonight, that means they're going to get one final opportunity again to prove to this coaching staff that they should be in there on October 8th when the games actually start mattering. So definitely something to be keeping an eye on here this evening, Blackhawks fans, and I'll be talking more on that and that topic here just a second in segment 2. On the back end for the Blackhawks, looks like it's going to be TJ Brody and Seth Jones. However, I do want to reiterate that Coach Luke Richardson, when speaking with the media yesterday after practice, said that the plan seems like it's for Alec Martinez and Seth Jones to still open things up as the top pairing. Alex Vlasic and TJ Brody together as the Blackhawks second pairing is what Richardson said. Doesn't look like Martinez is going to get an opportunity here tonight. They've been giving him some maintenance days over the last couple of weeks. But regardless of what happens here this weekend, it does seem like that's what Richardson ideally would want things to begin with on the back end for the Blackhawks. But tonight we're going to see TJ Brody and Seth Jones, Alex Vlasic and Connor Murphy as the second pairing, and then Nolan Allen and Isaac Phillips as the third pairing. With Wyatt Kaiser still dealing with that illness, the Blackhawks haven't ramped him back up yet. And we still haven't seen him back on the ice. And then, as I just mentioned, Alec Martinez out due to maintenance. In net for the Blackhawks, there is no 100% confirmation at this point in time. However, I do think it would be a good time to give Arvid Soderblom a start. We saw Drew Commesso go in the game on Tuesday against Minnesota. Peter Mrazek's gotten a couple of looks already here in the preseason. I think it's time to go with Arvid Soderblom, and I know that's not music to a lot of you Blackhawks fans' ears out there, but here's the reason why I think Arvid Soderblom needs to get at least one start before the preseason comes to a close this weekend, and that's because of the update we have on Laurent Brossoit. And it's nothing negative, Blackhawks fans. Don't worry, he is still on that original 5 to 7 week timeline that he was originally diagnosed with, and it feels like he could be on pace to return to the Blackhawks somewhere during the midway point of their season opening road trip. So to me, that rules him out for the season opener against the Utah Hockey Club, although we knew that was going to be a Peter Mrazek game. What's really interesting, though, Blackhawks fans, is after that game against Utah, the Blackhawks are going to have Wednesday and Thursday off, and then Friday and Saturday, they have a back-to-back against the Edmonton Oilers and the Winnipeg Jets. And if Laurent Brossoit isn't able to return by the back end of that back-to-back against the Winnipeg Jets, that feels like a game that Arvid Soderblom is going to have to start, because the Blackhawks are going to be giving Peter Mrazek the Edmonton Oilers on Friday night. You probably don't want to be pushing him that early in the season, given his groin injury history. Feels like if Brossoit isn't ready to go by, I think that's October 11th against the Winnipeg Jets, that would be a game that Arvid Soderblom might have to start. So, in order to get him ready for that, I think it would be wise to give him one preseason game of action, even if you do think Brossoit is going to be ready for that game against Winnipeg. As a precautionary measure, I would probably give Arvid Soderblom the start here tonight, albeit you do want to pick up a win to not drop your 5th consecutive preseason game. But I do think you want to be giving Arvid Soderblom those reps. So that's the lineup I expect the Blackhawks to roll with when they hit the ice at the United Center tonight against the Minnesota Wild. Going to take the first break on today's episode, Blackhawks fans, but don't go anywhere, because when I return, I'll get into every key storyline you need to watch over the weekend before the preseason wraps up. But first, real quick, I got to talk to you all about the fine folks over at FanDuel. And to all my NFL fans out there, you can now start the season with a big return over at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can go and check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you also happen to place your bets. And all of my Blackhawks fans out there, FanDuel has now dropped the over-under lines for all 32 NHL teams' projected point totals for the 2024-25 regular season. And for the Blackhawks, FanDuel has listed their over-under point total at 74.5, which I think is a really savvy line. I expect them to be somewhere in the ballpark of 70 to 78 points. But if you have an inkling on the over, be sure to go and check out FanDuel.com right now. And if you're not already a member, go and create an account, and when you put $5 down, you'll get $200 worth of bonus bets guaranteed. Yes, you heard me right. Go and create an account if you're not already signed up with FanDuel by visiting FanDuel.com, and when you put only $5 down, you'll be rewarded with $200 guaranteed with America's #1 sportsbook. Just wanted to say thank you to everyone out there for making Locked On Blackhawks your very first listen here to start off your day. Now, for your second listen, make sure to go and check out the Locked On NHL podcast, where the season never ends, providing national expertise with a local perspective. And you can easily find the link to Locked On NHL down in the description of this video, or simply search Locked On NHL on YouTube or wherever you may be listening to your podcasts. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Segment 2, with the Blackhawks playing in their penultimate preseason game here tonight at the United Center against the Minnesota Wild. I did want to be sure to go over all the biggest storylines for you Blackhawks fans to be watching, as the final roster is about to be solidified. And this will pretty much carry over into the game tomorrow against the St. Louis Blues as well, right? I mentioned Brandon Baddock. I think he's going to be going down to Rockford any second now, probably. So with Reichel and Athanasiou appearing to be the two healthy forward scratches, we know Wyatt Kaiser still isn't all the way 100% healthy on the back end. That leaves Alec Martinez really as the only healthy scratch. There isn't that much rotating that the Blackhawks can do in their lineup between tonight against Minnesota and tomorrow against St. Louis. So for the most part, these storylines kind of remain the same for all of you Blackhawks fans to watch. They kind of remain the same throughout both games before the weekend comes to a close and the games start mattering for real on Tuesday night in Utah. Just a reminder, that is a 9 p.m. Central Time puck drop. Not the most fortunate for us fans here in the Chicagoland area. Segment 2, though, what to watch tonight against the Minnesota Wild. The biggest storylines for all you Blackhawks fans. Number 1, I think, is just, can the Blackhawks get their much-needed first preseason win? And the reason I say it's much-needed isn't because really they're 0-3-1. It's because of who the team is that's 0-3-1, right? Like, the Blackhawks were in a playoff contending spot. 0-3-1 wouldn't really matter to me. I know that it would certainly disappoint and still concern some fans the same way that it is right here, right now, but it's concerning to me. The reason it's concerning an 0-3-1 start for the Blackhawks is because of how crucial a preseason that this is and was for the Blackhawks, because it's time for them to take that next step. It's time for them to not be a bottom 5 team in hockey. It's time for them to go and take that next leap in the rebuild. And if they don't do that, if they don't, and I said if they don't execute in the preseason, if they don't make every practice and every opportunity count, they jeopardize not doing that in the regular season. And if they don't attain that goal this year, there's going to be a lot of people answering the bell to that for the first time in a while here in the Blackhawks organization. So that's number one thing I'd be watching for over the weekend, really, is can the Blackhawks play a better brand of hockey mostly, but they also need to do that and come away with a victory. I think that would kind of ease the tension of this struggling preseason for a lot of us Blackhawks fans out there. The next storyline I think you all should be watching here this weekend is, can Teuvo Teravainen solidify his spot on the Blackhawks top line? Luke Richardson mentioned to the media yesterday he's given Teuvo another crack at things here tonight with Bertuzzi and Bedard, and he said if Teravainen goes and takes this opportunity by the horns, like Kevin Korchinski didn't do against Minnesota, two very different situations, I know, but then that would likely mean Teravainen gets that spot on the Blackhawks top line in Utah on the 8th. So that's definitely something to be watching. It feels like to me it's probably down to he and Philip Kurashev at this point in time between who's going to get that top line right wing spot. Tyler Bertuzzi, Connor Bedard, I think their spots are pretty set in stone. Can Teuvo Teravainen solidify the Blackhawks top line on opening night with a good performance in these final 2 preseason games? And that takes me to my next storyline, which is who's going to earn the second line center spot? Was a potential job for Frank Nazar to take. I really think that was kind of the only true reason he had a little bit of a chance to make the Blackhawks roster, because there is this little bit of a hole at the second line center spot. And if he went and knocked things out of the park in the preseason, hey, that could have been an easy gap for him to fill. Now we know that is not going to be Nazar to open up the season. To me, it's down to 2 players. It's either going to be Philip Kurashev, who didn't really play center whatsoever last year, and I don't really think is a center at the NHL level, and Andreas Athanasiou, who's never really been a center before coming to Chicago, and on any other NHL team probably isn't a center. So you can see why there was a hole there for Frank Nazar. Neither guys really ran with this opportunity, though, here in the preseason. Of course, feels like Kurashev would have the leg up over Athanasiou right now. AA has been pretty ghostly here in the preseason. He's on the outside looking in at practice yesterday, so I think Kurashev has the advantage. However, I don't think he's nailed himself into that spot whatsoever, and could be really interesting if Teuvo doesn't solidify his spot on the top line. Kurashev could potentially go get that job, could leave an opening for Athanasiou at the second line center spot. Who is going to earn those final 2 top 6 spots that I think are up for grabs? Taylor Hall, I think he's going to be that second line left wing. And then Lucas Reichel, despite his struggles in the preseason, I probably still expect him to open up at the right wing on the Blackhawks second line on October 8th. Next storyline to be watching, Blackhawks fans, Pat Maroon, Ryan Donato, Joey Anderson, and Craig Smith. I would say those 4, even though Reichel and AA are on the back burner right now, those 4, sure, there is a chance that all 4 of them make their way into the lineup on opening night. I would say the odds of that happening are pretty low, though, and they're all kind of in the same spot right now. Craig Smith, I think, has a leg up over everyone else. Ultimately, though, these final 2 preseason games, to me, are going to determine which of these guys are going to be in the opening night lineup. And then it's kind of the same thing on the back end between Nolan Allen and Isaac Phillips. Wyatt Kaiser still out. Alec Martinez not playing here this evening. It's a chance for them to prove to the coaching staff that both of them should be in there against Utah as well. I think Phillips probably has a leg up over Allen right now. However, it's going to be really curious. We're getting closer. Wyatt Kaiser, don't expect him to play, quite honestly, on the 8th. So that would leave the Blackhawks with the 7 defensemen I mentioned yesterday. Who's going to be the 7th defenseman, though? Is it going to be Isaac Phillips or is it going to be Nolan Allen? Definitely something that can be determined in the final preseason games for the Blackhawks here this evening. That's going to take me to my second break of the show here, Blackhawks fans. But don't go anywhere, because before I wrap things up, I still got to get into 23-year-old defenseman Alex Vlasic's 2024-25 season preview. Real quick, just another reminder to please go smash the like button, comment down below, and most importantly, subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube. Would really love to try and hit 2,000 before things get underway in Utah next Tuesday. And also a reminder that Mailbag Monday is right around the corner, and it's going to be the final Mailbag Monday before the regular season begins. I know lots of you Blackhawks fans and viewers have Blackhawks questions that you want answered right here on the show Monday morning. Please make sure to reach out in the comment section down below of this video. If you're someone who's tuning in through an audio platform, you can easily reach out and DM me on any one of my social media channels, or you can even email lockdownblackhawks@gmail.com. Please make sure to reach out with those questions. Can't do the segment if you don't reach out, and I'll be sure, again, to answer them live on the show on Monday morning. Segment 3, before I wrap things up, though, time to get into my next Blackhawks 2024. Apologies to everyone who just saw that spit along with me. The next 2024-25 season preview segment that I'm going to be getting into here on the show, and it's none other than 23-year-old defenseman Alex Vlasic. And again, I am still going to go over Tyler Bertuzzi. I still have to go over Andreas Athanasiou. I'm having a goaltenders episode come out as well. Taylor Hall. Got a couple more that I'm going to squeeze in there before the 8th. Just another reason that you should be subscribed to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube. 100% free. Won't cost you anything. And really does help me out tremendously. But Alex Vlasic, next season preview that I'm going to be getting into here today. And boy, technically wasn't his rookie year last year for the Blackhawks, because he did have a little bit of NHL experience in each of the last 2 years, following him departing Boston University after the conclusion of his junior season. But man, this kid absolutely shined last year in what technically should have been his rookie season for the Blackhawks, proving himself as one of the better young defensive defensemen in the entire NHL. Really took on a top defenseman role for the Blackhawks, and knocked it out of the park. And this was someone in Alex Vlasic that I had been high on since the Hawks drafted him in the second round. Even I didn't imagine him dominating defensively the way that he did last year as a 22-year-old, again, in his first full year at the NHL level. And I think that kind of changed the perspective and expectations all of us have around Alex Vlasic. Now, I don't think we envision him to ever be a game-breaking offensive defenseman who's racking up a point per game or anything like that. No, but being 6'6", being 6'7", he is a little bit of a skinny kid, but he just turned 23 this summer. I fully expect him to be putting on weight year in and year out as he continues to mature. There are just so many physical tools, and also the way that he developed kind of some of the weaknesses in his game. I mean, really, really have changed the narrative around the future of Alex Vlasic here in Chicago, and I'm sure the Blackhawks front office is as ecstatic as us Blackhawks fans are about that matter of fact. And last year, Vlasic put it all together after a really solid year prior down in Rockford with the Ice Hogs. Got to give a lot of credit to the Ice Hogs coaching staff and Jared Nightingale, Anders Sorensen down there. Man, really, really helped develop Alex Vlasic's skating abilities. I thought looked much better than they did when he first appeared on our radar. The puck-moving abilities were impressive, right? And then even just how comfortable he was in his own zone and on the penalty kill, man. He looked like a natural out there. And for him to put up the numbers that he did at his age for a Blackhawks team that really had no help around him, even more credit and even more kudos to Alex Vlasic for the successful year that he had. Played in 76 of the 82 games for the Blackhawks, tallied 2 goals and 14 assists for 16 points. As I mentioned, though, I don't ever imagine that being like the bread and butter of his game, racking up points. But what was more impressive by far than his 16 points in 76 games was averaging 21 minutes and 30 seconds of ice time per game for the Blackhawks as a 22-year-old, and finishing as a -4. And I know plus-minus is not a meaningful or very accurate stat to depict how relevant someone is or how crucial and significant their impact is to the team. For Alex Vlasic to have been playing those minutes and to have only been a -4 for the Blackhawks it's absolutely mind-melting. I think when he was off of the ice, the Blackhawks were like a minus 100 probably. So, yeah, Alex Vlasic, man, really impressive stuff last year. Also blocked 148 shots, a willing shot blocker on a team that didn't have the puck very much. Also had 60 takeaways on the defensive side of things. All the underlying defensive numbers were incredible. His zone denial rate, how impressive his first pass was, getting the puck out of harm's way in the defensive zone. Like the underlying analytics for Jay Fresh, I mean, were phenomenal. I really wish I had pulled them up actually and had remembered that before I'd gotten into this segment, but he was in like the 95th percentile in a lot of defensive analytics, again, as a 22-year-old. So smashing success last year for Vlasic. As far as where does he need to improve / continue to develop, first things first, I think just with the NHL getting faster and with pace being the name of the game right now, Vlasic just needs to keep working on his acceleration and his skating abilities. Like, if he's able to keep up with his size, it's a huge advantage for the Blackhawks defense moving forward. So just continue to work on those wheels with the way that the game is trending, and then just keep getting more comfortable with the puck on his stick. I think those are probably the two areas that he needs to continue developing, and we saw strides in those spots last year, and if he keeps getting better and better and better, right, like he's only going to get more comfortable in the areas that we don't think he's kind of a natural in. It already feels like he's a natural in defensive zone spots and on the penalty kill. If he works on his wheels, his playmaking abilities, his first pass, getting the puck out of the defensive zone, playing a simple, straightforward game, Alex Vlasic is going to be doing a lot of good things for the Blackhawks for a long, long time. As far as where do I think he needs to make the biggest strides this year, I think for sure number one is to keep getting more and more physical and to keep getting stronger and stronger, because with his size, if he can play a rugged, beat you down game in front of the opposing goal, in front of the Blackhawks goaltender, and in board battles, it's not really the nature of his game right now. As I mentioned, he is still a little bit skinny. But if he can continue to get stronger and use that strength to it's only going to aid into his defensive success, his long reach, and how he is able to get the puck out of harm's way, and how he is really good at breaking up puck carriers trying to enter the offensive zone with speed. If he can add a little bit of a mean streak and just be more physical, that's going to make him an even bigger problem for opposing players to play against. Two, I think it's for him to develop a much better shot from the blue line. Only 2 goals in 76 games out of Alex Vlasic last year. Never really seen him have like a booming slap shot or anything, and for someone who's 6'7", we know he's certainly capable, so that's something that also plays along with getting stronger and adding some weight. You're going to be able to shoot the puck harder. So those are the 2 areas I'd really like to see Alex Vlasic make strides in this year. As far as what numbers I expect, always tough to do this like I say every segment, but in particular, it's tough for a defenseman to put a finger on what kind of numbers I want from him, and I don't want it to be like, if Vlasic doesn't achieve these numbers, it doesn't mean it's a lackluster season from him. Again, this just isn't ever going to be a strength of his. But in an 82-game pace, I have Alex Vlasic scoring 5 goals. That is a little wishful, I will say, but given the leap that we saw from him year 1 to year 2, I don't think it's crazy to see another big-time leap coming out of 23-year-old Alex Vlasic this year. I also have him going up to 20 assists from 14 in 76 games last year to 20 in 82. I don't expect this significant leap, but I do want to see some strides there, and that puts him at 25 points in 82 games. And if Alex Vlasic puts up those numbers, I think a lot of us Blackhawks fans would be absolutely thrilled. Time on ice-wise, I know Alec Martinez has been brought in, and same with TJ Brody. But man, this is a kid who is going to be playing top 4 minutes. Probably not the 21-29 that he averaged last year, but it's probably around 20-21 minutes once again. He's going to be a staple, at the very least, of the Blackhawks' second defensive pairing because of the abilities that he already has. And then would love to see him. I figure this is going to be a Blackhawks team that, again, is probably going to be playing, hopefully not as much defense as they have in years past, but more defense than offense. Vlasic would love to see him rack up the shot block numbers once again. I think Alec Martinez could kind of be passing that torch to him, as he's been a noted shot blocker throughout his career. Alex Vlasic, I have a feeling, could be known as that for a while here in Chicago. But that's going to wrap up Alex Vlasic's season preview. That's going to wrap up today's episode of Locked On Blackhawks. As always, thank you all again for joining me on the show. be sure to go and follow Locked On Blackhawks for free right now, wherever you may be listening to your podcast, and to subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube. That way you can get the latest episode as soon as it becomes available each and every day. And if you want to go and follow me on X, my personal is at Jack Bushman 2. Be sure, though, to go and follow my strictly Blackhawks account at Talkin' Hockey. That way you can get all of the latest Blackhawks news and updates. Until the next episode, everyone, I'm going to try to have one coming out tomorrow morning before the Blackhawks season finale against the Blues. However, I'm not going to make any promises. My Missouri Tigers have a huge game at 11 a.m. Central Time against the Texas A&M Aggies, and I really need my boys to stay undefeated. It's going to be an early morning for me, but if I can, I will get out an episode over the weekend for all of you Blackhawks fans. Until then, everyone stay safe, enjoy your weekend. I'll see you next time on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.